The Tennessee Titans still have 3 weeks until they kick off the regular season, but the backup quarterback competition is officially over. I'll explain why on today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast.
You are Locked On Titans, your daily Tennessee Titans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Titans podcast. I am your host, Tyler Rowland. Titans fans, today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast is brought to you by FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get 3 weeks of a free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. On today's show, we're going to talk about this backup quarterback competition, and I think that it is finally over. Also, Arden Key will not be suspended, but the Titans still may need some help at edge. And Brian Callahan must keep an open mind about the kicker competition or lack thereof. So before I get into all of that, I do want to thank you guys for making the Locked On Titans podcast your first listen each and every day. Remember, Monday through Friday, Tennessee Titans content all year round, always for free. You're not going to beat that anywhere else. Make sure that you get subscribed, stay subscribed. It's your team every day here on the Locked On Titans podcast. And speaking of every day, shout out to my everydayers out there tuning in Monday through Friday. If you want an everydayer, well, you need to be one, because I'm going to have some great content coming up this week. Tomorrow, we're going to look at the roster battles and where that's at through 2 weeks of training camp, 3 weeks of training camp, really. Also, I'm going to do a revamped 53-man roster prediction now that we've gone through 2 preseason games, and then the Titans will have practice this week as well, and I'll be covering all of that. So again, make sure that you get subscribed, stay subscribed, throw a thumbs up on the video, throw a Titan up down in the chat. With all that being said, let's talk about this backup quarterback competition, because I know that some of you don't want to hear it, but this thing is over. It is over. Now, I also know that a lot of people are going to say, well, it was always over. It was never really going to be Malik Willis as the backup quarterback. And look, I would like to think that that's not the case, and that if Malik Willis truly earned the backup quarterback job, that he would get it. But the reality is, I've been talking about Mason Rudolph as one of the best backups in the NFL since the Titans signed him. He's got an 8-4-1 record, a winning record, literally twice as many wins as his losses. And yes, it was with a Pittsburgh Steelers team that was a good team, but we're talking about a backup quarterback. Of course, they need to be supported by the rest of the team with a good run game and a good defensive performance. That's going to be absolutely necessary. There are starting quarterbacks in the NFL that need that sort of support to be able to win games. So, of course, a backup is, but Mason Rudolph has proven that when he gets that support, he can win a game. And the reality is, Malik hasn't necessarily proved that. And if Malik Willis had proved that at all, he would have gotten opportunities to do it. But the Titans immediately last year, when Ryan Tannehill got hurt, once they had a week to actually set things, they went straight to Will Levis. And then in the rookie season, Malik Willis had the opportunity, and they went straight to Josh Dobbs off the street. This is a guy, I said it last night on my reaction show to the game, he's literally never thrown a touchdown pass in his NFL career in a game. So, look, he made some good plays in that drive in the second half against the third stringers, but the first half was a mixed bag, and it's the same old excuses. The offensive line wasn't good enough. The penalties put him. Have you ever noticed that when Malik Willis controls a drive, there happens to be more pre-snap penalties, false starts, delay of games? It's just something about the operation with Malik Willis in the game that is just not as smooth as other guys who I would consider NFL quarterbacks. Okay, so Malik Willis could make the team. The NFL has changed the rules up over the last few years. You could keep 3 quarterbacks. They got to be on your 53-man roster, but when it's your game day active roster, which is about 46 to 48 players, you can have a third quarterback that doesn't count towards that 46 to 48 players. So Malik could fill that emergency third quarterback role. That would be perfectly fine. He filled that for the Titans last year when Ryan Tannehill and Levis were both healthy after the bye week. So I think that he's done enough to make the roster. I think he's done enough to make the team and be the emergency backup emergency third quarterback. But look, we just got to acknowledge the reality here. With the second stringers, Malik couldn't get anything going, and then Mason Rudolph comes in, drives him right down the field, and scores a touchdown. Like, I said it last night, and I'll reiterate it here. The offensive line did not play well, but Malik did not play well either. And if you can't acknowledge both of those are true at the same time, then I don't know what else to say to you. Like, it's not just, oh, the O-line played bad. Anything Malik does doesn't matter. Oh, Malik didn't play good. Anything that anybody else does doesn't matter. Two things can be congruent at once. All right? So we've seen enough. It's been enough. It's time. Like, how many years does a player get? Like, I made this point in previous seasons. Malik Willis can improve every single year. But the amount of improvement that it would take for him to be a viable backup quarterback or a reliable backup quarterback, or God forbid, a starting quarterback in the NFL, it's just too much. He would have to improve far. It would take so long. And at some point in time, why would you develop Malik Willis for 4 or 5 seasons instead of just moving on to another project that's a younger player who might have more potential? Look, I know that Malik has his fans out there. I wanted Malik Willis to succeed, but reality is reality. This backup quarterback competition is over. Mason Rudolph is the Titans' backup quarterback. It is not going to be Malik Willis. He does not have a shot to overthrow him now. Saturday night was Malik Willis's opportunity to overtake Mason Rudolph if it was ever going to be a possibility, which I don't think it was. And he didn't take advantage. You could say the O-line did this. He played better in the second half. He made, but it's not good enough. If you don't want to accept that, I don't know what else I can say to you. He is just not good enough. Now, I think Malik Willis could be awesome in like the XFL or the UFL, whatever they call it now, the Spring Football League. I think he could be fantastic in that league, and it would give him the chance to continue to develop and improve, and he would get much more reps, and it would be at a slower speed because it's not the NFL level, and maybe that would allow him to, take another big leap. He can get back into the NFL, all of that. I think that's what's destined to happen. Now, I will say that I think Malik is a guy who's very religious. I think he's going to be very active in the church, and I think he's going to make an incredibly positive impact on human beings for the rest of his life. Like, Malik seems like a good man. Like, he's a good person. You know what I mean? But just being a good person isn't enough. In life, you could be the greatest person ever. You got to have some talent. You got to have some ability. And again, Mason Rudolph is just a better player. He's one of the better backups in the league. And Malik Willis is just not there yet. So you guys can continue fighting over the backup quarterback spot. To me, it is done. And honestly, it probably has always been done. Maybe it's a tad foolish to even think that it could ever actually change, but we could slam the book on it now. No reason to debate. Mason Rudolph is your backup quarterback. Malik Willis is your third string quarterback, and nothing that happened on Saturday night changed any of that. So with that being said, really the biggest news from Saturday was probably Arden Key is not going to be suspended. So let's talk about what happened there and how I still think the Titans could add an edge rusher. I don't think that's out of the question just because Arden Key is going to be back. Before we get into it, I do want to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more, whether you're into speed, power, or style. eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. Find all the parts you need at the prices you want. It's going to be easy to make your car the MVP. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay guaranteed fit. Only available to U.S. customers. Titans fans, let's continue today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast. Talked about the backup quarterback position. Now I'm going to talk about Arden Key and the new development that he will not be suspended. Also, I'll tell you why Brian Callahan needs to keep more of an open mind when we talk about the kicker competition or lack thereof. Before I get into all of that, I do want to thank you guys again for making the Locked On Titans podcast your first listen each and every day. Now for your second listen, check out Locked On Fantasy Football. Guys, it's that time of year. You need to get the best daily insights, the best fantasy draft strategies so you can win your league this season. Check out Locked On Fantasy Football, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, look. Honestly, I was kind of shocked. I was talking to one of my listeners here, but one of the GOATs, in my opinion, who I've been talking to for quite some time, Travis. And we were talking on Saturday about Jeffrey Simmons, who posted, "Hey, I got big news for you guys in a couple of hours." Well, you know, Travis was like, "Hey, what do you think Big Jeff is going to say?" Like, what? And I said, "Man, there's no way that Jeffrey Simmons is going to break Tennessee Titans news like that impacts the team. It's probably like a children's camp or a partnership with a sponsor or, you know, something like that. Because people love to, I got a big announcement. And it's just like something like that, you know, which is great. You know, I'm not trying to sully children's football camps or deals with sponsorships for charity or anything like that. But, you know, it's not going to be like something that impacts the Titans season. Well, boy, I was wrong, because Jeffrey Simmons had news that impacts the Titans season. And according to Big Jeff, Arden Key will not be suspended for 6 games. So if you guys remember, just to recount the whole story here, about 3 weeks ago, Paul Kaharski reported that Arden Key was set to be suspended for 6 weeks. Now, since that moment, we had heard literally nothing about this. They asked Brian Callahan. They said they expect him to miss time, but they don't know anything officially. So he's going to keep practicing and going to keep running with the first team defense and blah, blah, blah. And we just went 3 weeks with no update. I mean, when Danico Autry got suspended, Ian Rappaport reported it, you know, Adam Schefter, all the big insiders. Danico Autry put out an apology letter apologizing to Texans fans. Like, it was pretty obvious that was real and that wasn't going anywhere. But this was like, why hasn't it been announced officially? Why hasn't any of the big national media people said anything about it? What is going on? And I even posted a poll on my Twitter account at TicTacTitans. Like, hey, do you think that Arden Key is going to get suspended? Do you think that maybe PK was wrong? Well, it was like 50-50 because we just didn't know. Like, it's so strange. Now, my theory all along is that Arden Key is appealing behind the scenes. He's going to the NFL and he's saying this isn't right. His agent is going to the NFL and saying, no, we're not accepting this. And a legal battle was taking place behind the scenes. And that's why nothing official had been announced. That was my theory as to what was happening. Well, turns out that is exactly what was happening, because Arden Key won his appeal behind the scenes. And I remember I had a few people telling me, I think it was here in the YouTube comments, it can't be an appeal because it wasn't announced officially. It has to be announced officially for there to be an appeal. Well, clearly not. We all learned definitively that that is not true. There can be an appeal behind the scenes before the suspension is officially announced. So, according to Jeffrey Simmons, and I feel pretty good about his word on this, he wouldn't be going out here and breaking news like this if it wasn't real. Arden Key is not going to be suspended for 6 games. He's not going to be suspended at all. He's going to be ready for week 1. That is obviously great news for the Tennessee Titans, okay? They were already very thin at edge, and while I think that Arden Key is more of a rotational player than an actual starter, I think he would be better as a third rusher. Right now, he is the second best edge rusher on the Titans. That is a sign of how bad the group is outside of Harold Landry, in my opinion. But also, it shows that they need Arden Key. He's their second best edge rusher. They need him, okay? So, big for the Titans. But let me say this. I still think the Titans need a pass rusher. Like, the Titans need another pass rusher, okay? And a bunch of them went off the board. Emmanuel Ogbah's off the board. Carl Lawson's now off the board to the Cowboys. That leaves Shaq Lawson. Charles Harris is a guy who I'm interested in. I know a lot of you guys like Yannick Ngakoue. Look, I was on board with Yannick Ngakoue when Arden Key was going to be suspended for 6 games because Yannick Ngakoue is just a pure pass rusher who can't really help you otherwise. But now that Arden Key isn't suspended for 6 games, I'd rather just let Arden Key be that kind of guy. The Titans need somebody with a little bit more physicality. So again, a Shaq Lawson, a Charles Harris, or Randy Gregory is being released by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers because he just never reported to camp, just never showed up. Now, obviously, why did he not show up? What's going on with him? Those are questions that would have to be answered. But if the Titans could get him to report for a low-end contract, why not? Like, Randy Gregory is still a pretty good player, okay? Like, this isn't like the Shaq Lawson, Charles Harris, Yannick Ngakoue. Like, Randy Gregory is still a pretty good player. So if the Titans could make that move, I would be all on board for that. So, look, we're all excited about Jalen Harrell. I get that. I'm excited as well. But we're talking about a rookie 7th-round pick. So he may have 2 sacks in Saturday night's game. He may have been impressive in training camp so far. But we should all know that you can't get too overhyped on rookies. All right? We should know that. Also, Rashad Weaver has been an utter, I don't want to say utter. He's a mid-round pick. If you were expecting huge things from Rashad Weaver, that's probably your own fault for your expectations. But, after that 5.5 sack season, his second year, he just has not taken steps. Barely notice him in the preseason games, despite the fact he's getting a ton of reps. Like, can you count on Rashad Weaver to truly be a third rusher? Can you count on Jalen Harrell, a 7th-round rookie, to truly be a third rusher? I don't think so. So, to me, and Shane Ray was not impactful on Saturday night. Let's not get too overzealous there. He could be a good depth piece. Shane Ray could be a good number 5 edge. But I think that Randy Gregory would make some sense for the Titans as a free agent pickup. Again, if they could vet out his personal situation and make sure that, obviously he's in a good state of mind to play football. So, great news that Arden Key isn't suspended. Also, let me say this. Paul Kaharski has been an outright jerk to me my entire time covering this show. Multiple occasions, multiple platforms, he's been incredibly rude to me. But that doesn't change the fact that I think he's taken a little too much heat here. He said that Arden Key was set to be suspended. Now, he should have put in his report that Arden Key could still appeal. But he never put that in there because he wanted to make it seem like Arden Key is being suspended, and then you can hide behind the words of, I said set. But the reality is he did say he was set to be suspended. And technically he was right. He was set to be suspended, but he won his appeal. So, I can't say I'm a big fan of PK just because he's treated me poorly, but I also am an honest person. And if we're going to be, I know that it's fun to clown people, and that's what the internet does. Just, you're an idiot. You got it wrong. Freezing cold take. This guy's a moron, blah, blah, blah. But, let's just have a touch of nuance and a touch of honesty here. But with that being said, speaking of nuance and honesty, let's talk about how Brian Callahan needs to keep more of an open mind about this kicker situation. Before we get into it, I do want to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Look, you've heard me talk about FanDuel a lot, okay? It's America's number 1 sportsbook. Also, Titans, 4.5, week 1 against the Bears. Love that. Love it. Anyways, moving on. Well, I have something different for you, okay? Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and you're going to get 3 free weeks of a trial of NFL Sunday Ticket. A 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube or YouTube TV. Then, with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel at any time. Just visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to download America's #1 sportsbook. Titans fans, let's cap off today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast. Talked about backup quarterback. We talked about edge rusher. Now I'm going to talk about this kicker situation, okay? Because it's sticking in my craw a little bit, I have to admit. Before I get into it, though, I do want to thank you guys again for making the Locked On Titans podcast your first listen each and every day. Remember, tomorrow we're going to look at some position battles. I'm going to do an updated 53-man roster at some point in time during this week. The Titans have practice this week, and I'm going to be breaking that down. And then the final preseason game of the year is on Saturday night. Also, over on the Tic Tac Titans film channel, I'm going to do 3-player deep dives. Malik Willis's performance on Saturday night, Jaquan Jackson's performance on Saturday night, and Jalen Harrell's performance on Saturday night. So that's all coming on the Tic Tac Titans YouTube channel this week. Link for that is down in the description. Make sure that you check that out. But as for your second listen, you got to go check out Locked On Fantasy Football. Okay, you're going to get daily insights, best fantasy draft strategies so you can win your league this season. Check out Locked On Fantasy Football, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, listen. I'm going to make this quick. I'm going to make it nice and easy. I think that Brian Callahan is making a mistake by being so bold about Nick Folk being the Titans kicker this year. So Nick Folk did get about $3.5 million of guaranteed money from the Titans. And with that, Brian Callahan said after the game last night, after Saturday night's win, no, Nick Folk is the kicker this year. Completely slammed the door on any chance at all that Brayden Narveson could win the kicker job. I don't like that. I don't like that. Okay? Like, this isn't like Jeffrey Simmons and TK McClendon. Okay? This isn't like that. Nick Folk is 40 years old. Like, he's only a solution for this year, and then it's done. Okay? It just reminds me of Brett Kern and Ryan Stonehouse and Ryan Stonehouse's rookie season. If you would have told people that the Titans were going to cut Brett Kern and keep rookie undrafted free agent putter Ryan Stonehouse, people would have told you that you are an idiot. Okay? That's what the reaction was at the beginning of camp. There's no way that some undrafted free agent punter is going to take over for Brett Kern. But it happened. And then Ryan Stonehouse became one of the top 3 punters in the whole league. Okay? We have seen over the last few years plenty of rookie kickers come in right away and be difference makers. Watching Narveson nail that 59-yarder last night. Watching Narveson nail the 46-yard game winner. How can you be like, no matter what the guy does, no matter how many kicks he makes, no matter how far, no matter how clutch, no matter what, we're going with the 40-year-old kicker because we paid him. To me, that is valuing the wrong things. That is valuing your return on investment of the contract more than the long-term future of the team. I think there are some Titans fans out there who are just very, very optimistic. Look, the Titans aren't winning the Super Bowl this year, guys. And Nick Folk isn't going to be the difference between the Super Bowl and not the Super Bowl. Okay? The fact that Brian Callahan is literally saying, nope, this isn't a competition, he can't win it. Like, that just sends a bad message, in my opinion. Even if he believes that. Even if Brian Callahan believes in his soul, and him and Rand Carthon and Chad Brinker and Anthony Robinson have already said, no, we're keeping Nick Folk no matter what behind closed doors. You don't say that. Again, this isn't Jeffrey Simmons and, Quentin Bohanna, okay? Nick Folk is not a long-term option for this team. And just imagine if the Titans stay with Nick Folk because they paid him $3.5 million. They cut Brayden Narveson. because they have to cut down the roster to 53, and they aren't able to get him back on the practice squad because another team picks him up and puts him on their active roster. And then Narveson turns out to be a great kicker. He doesn't even have to be one of the best kickers in the NFL, just a top half of the league kicker. The Titans are going to be kicking themselves next offseason. So I recognize that Nick Folk may be more reliable and more consistent right now. But what about next year? And again, this season, I want the Titans to win as many games as possible. Don't get me wrong. But they're not winning the Super Bowl. They're not a Super Bowl contender. And there needs to be a part of this season that is looking towards the future. So we're not going to sit here and debate who should win the kicker job because it's clearly not open. Like, it's clearly not open, according to Brian Callahan. But what we can debate is whether or not that should be the case. And I think that Brayden Narveson is getting a raw deal by being told you're not making this team. No matter what you do, there's nothing you can do. You won't make this team. I just don't like that. I just don't like the way that that's positioned. And like having a kicker who can kick those long field goals, it's a weapon. Look at Evan McPherson for the Bengals and how important he was for their Super Bowl run. Like, I just think it's underestimating the value that those long field goals, because think about what that does for your offense. It gives you 10 more yards where you could score points that you can't score points otherwise. 10 more yards of the field that you're in scoring range. I think that matters, you know? So there may be a little bit less consistency. It may be a little bit of a gamble. But just to outright slam the door shut and say that Nick Folk's the winner and nothing that Narveson does can get him a spot on the team, I just don't like how that works. I just don't like how that sounds. And I think that I'm not telling Brian Callahan he has to give the job to Brayden Narveson. I'm not telling Brian Callahan that he must cut Nick Folk. But I think that Callahan should be a little bit more open-minded, in my opinion. That's all I'm asking for, is that he not just slam the door shut right now and say there's no way it could happen. Like, you should never be that black and white. It should never be that finite. And I just hope that Brian Callahan maybe reevaluates things and is willing to maybe be a little more open-minded. Again, other than the one day at training camp where I tweeted about Brayden Narveson, other than that one day, he's made every single possible kick. I think Jim Wyatt reported 13 for 17, and he went 0 for 4 the day that I tweeted about him. Sure as the world. Unbelievable. But, yeah, I'm just saying, keep an open mind, man. That's it. But with that being said, that is going to do it for me today, folks. Thumbs up on the video. Tighten up down in the chat. As always, I am your host, Tyler Rowland, and this was Locked On Titans.